Chairperson of the Board of PRASA, Mr. Leonard Ramakatani, the Group CEO of the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Mr. Zolani Kotifilenakis, ladies and gentlemen who are with us here present, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, let's also begin by thanking the media for being with us since the early hours of this morning. This is such an important occasion because we are talking about matters that affect the majority of South Africans and what the minister always calls either the working class or the poorest of the poor. Sometimes these issues don't get ventilated because it doesn't affect those who are in the upper echelons of society, and so we find that sometimes they're not ventilated as much as they should. So your presence here today has reminded us that indeed these matters are pressing, they are urgent, they are important, and they are things that need to be addressed speedily, which is why we're here today. Ladies and gentlemen, to just give us a welcome and give us some opening remarks, we're going to ask that we hand over to the board chair now. We are in his house, as it were, so he must welcome us with our open arms. Board chair, let me hand over to you, please.
No, thank you very much, Ayanda. Good morning. It's still a morning. It's still a morning. Good morning to everyone, the minister. Welcome to Mjanti, where PRASA function from. And the board that are here, most welcome. GC, welcome. And maybe let me apologize to the media as I welcome the others that you woke up early this morning to be in a lady with us. We're sorry that we made you wake up so early, but it was important to ask you to come with us on this trip, on this journey, so that we speak the same thing or we see the same thing with you. When we speak about the degree of damage that PRASA has suffered as a result, obviously, of the lockdown that happened last year in March, and of course the organized crime helping themselves on the asset, that we all see the same thing. But when we speak tomorrow about what is it that we have seen and the problem, the setback, and what we need to do, we can walk with you because you understand what we have seen. We have been early in the morning to Naledi. We have been from Naledi, now we came from Jamestown. All of us have seen the same thing. PRASA and the PRASA driven by the group CEO is to make sure that we turn around that situation. We change that situation from the worst to the better in terms of what we need to do, in terms of the plan. The plan is in place. Plan has been worked out with the board and the group CEO. We now have it. It was presented as the minister spoke about earlier on. You will see the little detail about what is going to be done. So the plan is there. Critical work that now need to happen is an implementation, 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 and implementation, so that the trains, the core function of this business being running trains, can indeed happen. So that's what we are committed as a board and management. That is what we need to do. And I won't maybe necessarily go into that detail, because that detail you'll see on the board. So you're welcome. You mustn't tire out sooner, because we're going to ask you now and then to walk the road with you, so that you are able to see, so that you can also give feedback to the public about the things that we are doing in PRASA. We are not sitting still, we are doing certain things, and that we'll speak about it in a minute. Minister, as I welcomed you, you were with us. You did say we're going to make some remarks. Let me allow you to make some remarks, and then of course the group CEO, and then go into detail. Thank you.
Okay. So, if you come close to me, it's at your own risk. As I take off this mask, maybe you've got Sputnik or Cypher or whatever in your system. But thank you very much, Ayanda, and the chair of the board, and Tate Leonard Ramatlakane, and members of the board of directors of PRASA, who are with us here today, and I think they will be properly introduced at a given point in time. The group CEO of PRASA, ZK Zolani Matthews, and the entire management of PRASA, which I think also will be introduced as and when they make presentations, which I think it should be a business-like presentation, capture the important parts of the presentation for the business we are here for. Part of this work have already been presented in Parliament through what we call a corporate plan, and the minister have on Friday pronounced on the budget in the MTF for the Department of Transport, and this is what we are all about today. PRASA remains one of the strategic state-owned entity in our country, with a critical and pivotal mandate of providing safe, affordable and reliable transport to the poorest of the poor. The recently published National Households Travel Survey 2020 confirms that passenger rail is the least expensive mode of public transport compared to all other modes, yet unavailable, and where available, it is overcrowded. In order to address some of these challenges faced by PRASA, the funding for PRASA over the medium term is estimated at 27.2%, which is 57 billion rand of the department's budget. This is a large part of the department budget, which increases from 66.7 billion in 2021 to 2022 to 70.2 billion and 72.5 billion in the outer years. Now, you will realize that this is not only our commitment, this is what we presented on Friday. And this explains exactly where are we as a Department of Transport in this country when it comes to passenger rail services in the Republic. So we walk the talk. We don't just put lip service and don't support, because somebody will ask, you say PRASA is a priority, but what is its allocation in terms of its budget, and how does it actually become a priority in this particular instance? This is a large part of the department allocation. The investment we are making in passenger rail is part of the implementation of our overarching rail-to-road strategy, which is crucial towards positioning rail as the backbone of our public transport system. While PRASA has struggled for many years to roll out its modernization program due to chronic challenges, we have no doubt that our intervention will place PRASA on a stable footing. The modernization program is meant to improve the reliability of services by reconstructing dilapidated infrastructure, secure the infrastructure, and increase the number of trains to avoid overcrowding. It therefore entails focused spending on repairs and maintenance as part of PRASA's rolling stock fleet renewal program, as well as improved security system. The recent appointment of a permanent board and CEO for PRASA is not only expected to lead to the intensified implementation of its modernization program, but will accelerate the process of building requisite capacity to ensure that it remains a viable entity. Challenges at PRASA range from leadership instability, lack of critical skills, and organizational structure that is not responsive to the needs of PRASA, vandalism and theft of rail infrastructure, inadequate and outdated rail rolling stock and infrastructure, rail reserve encroachment that interrupt train services, and financial mismanagement leading to audit findings, amongst others. These are the critical and fundamental challenges that are facing us in this organization. So as we intervene and we seek to make this place glorious and a better place, we must understand what is important before us. These are the things that we need to address. We have adopted a risk-based approach in tackling these challenges. Our ability to mitigate the risk is critical in ensuring that our interventions realize their intended objectives. To address all these challenges and turn around the business of PRASA, key strategic interventions have been prioritized and their implementation need to be accelerated. Following the appointment of the Board of Control in October 2020, we signed what we call a shareholders' compact, committing the board to delivering on key interventions meant to stabilize operations and improve the service offering to the users. The multi-pronged approach we have adopted, which targets restoring of the service while simultaneously building internal capacity, will ensure that the impact of our intervention is seen and felt within a short space of time. Now, restoring the service is part of what we're exposing you to, that there is a total shutdown of services and beyond the shutdown itself because of vandalism and theft that have occurred within the network. Gauteng Metro Rail is currently experiencing an alarming increase in the number of reported cases for infrastructure theft and vandalism, ranging from overhead electrical lines, which we have seen, electrical substations, as well as vandalism of stations and depot buildings. You will have seen today that most of our trains are running on electrical capacity in terms of the locomotives that we have. We have had to shift from that to diesel, which is very expensive for the company like PRASA because of the vandalism of substations. In those substations, you've got transformers which feed electrical capacity to the locomotives that pull the carriages on a daily basis. So that capacity is not limited, it's totally vandalized. So, and also you look at the pairways and have totally been destroyed, particularly in the part of the east of the network. The rise of vandalism and theft of critical infrastructure components, unprecedented levels, at the core is the illicit trading of copper and steel on the black market. While this is happening, we believe that part of the problem is leadership negligence. When we shut down the trains, there was vandalism. It did not start, but it means that we didn't take contingency measures to secure the lines and preserve the little that is left. Now, negligence kicked in and the entire network was brought down. So that's why we're struggling to bring back the corridors. And that is the function, part of the things that we're looking at and that need to be implemented. As part of our budget speech, we highlighted the state of vandalism in PRASA. As a follow to the minister's announcement, an oversight visit has been undertaken from what we have pronounced. The intensity of the damage caused at PRASA and for PRASA to unveil the recovery plan on how it will be fixed and secured. The group CEO and his team will speak to that, and you'll ask questions in terms of what you have seen, within what time, and the capacity, the costs involved. You will see that. You no longer want slogans. You want practicality as to how this is going to be undertaken. The group CEO and his team will basically respond to that. Despite the COVID-19 disruption, as at March 2021, 25 new trains had been provisionally accepted for delivery. This brings the total number of new trains delivered to date to 61. As at as at the end of February 2021, a total of 878 jobs were created in the rolling stock fleet renewal program through the company that is doing this in Niger, which is called Kibela. Chairperson, as we committed to returning to service our rail operations, we have identified the following corridors as priority corridors for service recovery this financial year. In Gauteng, we have prioritized Mabopane to Pretoria. This Mabopane was in the budget speech of the President, which is big in terms of the corridors that we've got in Gauteng. Leralla is on the side of Germiston, from where we come from, but we couldn't go. Naledi to Johannesburg in the morning. You took a ride if you wake up early from Naledi to is it Langlaagte? Yeah, Langlaagte. And then 4 is Pienaarspruit to Pretoria, Saulsville, Pretoria to Kalfontein, Davidton to Johannesburg. And in the Western Cape, we have prioritized Cape Town to Cape Flats, Cape Town to Simonstown, Cape Town to Khayelitsha, and Captain's Clip. In KwaZulu-Natal, we have prioritized Crossmore Line, Kelso Line, KwaMashu, Umlazi. In the Eastern Cape, East London to Berlin. For the mainline passenger services, Johannesburg to Cape Town, Johannesburg to Gqeberha, Johannesburg to East London, Johannesburg to Komatipoort, Johannesburg to Musina, Cape Town to East London, Johannesburg to Durban. The impact of COVID-19 restrictions exposed the vulnerability of our network, resulting in occupation of the rail reserve by people who built illegal settlement on the tracks and inside the reserve. This was further exacerbated by the wanton destruction, theft, and vandalism of our infrastructure. Currently, PRASA run Naledi Johannesburg line with a diesel locomotive Monday to Friday, and only single tickets are sold. I'm told that the PRASA board and management visited the station this morning. For my part, we started off at Mayfair Station. This station is part of the National Station Improvement. That's where we started. Program and part of the Gauteng corridors to be recovered in this financial year. There have been serious vandalism and theft of rail infrastructure, and the station is currently not operational. The recovery program will include rebuilding the station, inclusive roof networks, floor wall finishes and drainage, and stormwater works. The recovery of the station and anticipated time for the station to be operational is anticipated for March 2022. At Germiston Depot, the facility was designed to accommodate operational staff that includes the section managers, train drivers, metro guards, service drivers, and admin staff. We conducted the interview on the backdrop of this, and we're right there. That was our last visit at Germiston, where we come from. But you can see the level of negligence that even that place, which is a depot for trained drivers and all of that, was flattened. So which means it's not a job that is done by syndicates out of tip-off that there is no security. The place was not secured at all. No roofs, nothing. It's gone as we speak, and you have seen that for yourself. So we don't talk theory. The depot structure is situated in a critical and main junction to support the operation of trains to Kwesine, Vereeniging, New Canada via Boysen, Leralla, Davidton, and Johannesburg trains. Personnel belongings and working tools of the staff were stolen. At the moment, the staff has been accommodated in the signaling building earmarked for satellite CTC for GNC. On security, PRASA have challenges with regard to security, which have left the infrastructure vandalized. This was as a result of the security contracts that were cancelled. But I need to hasten to say to you, just here in Park Station, we had security, but taps, when you go to the toilets, were vandalized whilst they were guarded. So you ask yourself a question, who is doing that? And what do we do with the security company that is undertaking the mission to protect the network? The plan that we've got in terms of security was informed by intelligence-driven operations, regulatory environment, and PRASA security response. PRASA adopted the strategy of having a fully fledged in-house security within the next 3 MTF period, but we have always said that that approach will also be complemented with security that will be contracted by PRASA to give us a full complement to fully guard the network. As we do the work that we are doing on the ground now to fix, in certain areas, after we've fixed signaling and all of that, replenished that work, at night people come back and steal. So, which means as we fix, we must guard. And we must also guard the trains. You will have seen the overcrowding, but you can't fight overcrowding if you don't provide alternative. Trains are frequent, they arrive on time, and they depart the stations on time, and all of that to avoid the overcrowding. There is overcrowding, and it will worsen because we are providing a limited service. As we fix and we bring back the corridors that have collapsed, since we have shut down with level 5 of COVID-19, we need to basically bring back these corridors and ensuring that they are properly secured. The Minister, together with the Board of PRASA, have launched the People's Responsibility to Protect, which is community mobilization strategy that involves communities in crime prevention, partnerships, and all of that. PRASA's business intelligence, with the help of law enforcement agencies and SAPs, continue to work around the clock to curb this escalating criminal activity. I can tell you now, as I move towards conclusion, that part of the problem we've got here, there are people who just don't deserve to work for PRASA. It's not a question of capacity, they just don't. Their heart and mind is no longer there. They simply come to work to mark the register. But secondly, it's a collapse of management, which we expect the group CEO to bring that back on track with the support of the board. The new structure, organizational structure, that is responsive to the sort of challenges we've got. Like I said, when you talk about what happened in the vandalism, somebody should be responsible for that. If you say today, we will recover the corridors and we will rebuild the infrastructure within this time period, who is overseeing that? Where is the team that is overseeing the recovery? Is there money for that? Is there proper accountability, awarding of contracts? In the past, this place was a place where contracts have been irregularly awarded. And can we be able to address that so that we are not in the bad books of the AG? And management have got its job cut out in this regard to ensure that things happen and happen accordingly. We've got a lot of things that must happen, and we've got to begin to categorize these things in terms of the short term, the long term, the medium term, and then deliver on those. The medium term and the short term is to get the corridors back and the trains running. Just in 2 intersections that we attended to, Kliptown and Davidton. On the other side, we have shattered and cut out 50,000 people commuting every day. And you can imagine what happens to those people. On the other side is 100,000 people. Germiston, 100,000 is east and west. So you'll understand east is from the side of Germiston. So 100,000 people are now commuting, relying on something else. You can imagine how it affects their pocket. So with speed, we need to recover services and get trains running back. Whilst we continue with the fancy work of modernization, good stations, that work must continue. But of immediate, these services must come back. And we know most of the things happened around here because there was no management. The last time we had fully fledged management is when Lucky Montana was here. And that's when you had semblance of organization. Leave Tim Kulu and all other things. But there was operations here. There was something running here. There were people who were accountable. Since then to date, you have had about 6 acting people at the group level in terms of top positions. And other positions were actually vacant. And there was no board. All boards were acting. And there was no minister. All ministers were acting. So this was just a place vulnerable for vandalism. And in between that, where there was a minister, the board, and some management, there was conflict, infighting. So we don't minimize. We don't have time for infighting, for pettiness. We don't have time for that. I want the board to be able to follow up on these things and hold management accountable and give ZK support. I'm not going to come to this place ever again and talk about conflicts. I want implementation. I want to visit, and I'm not going to put my foot off the pedal. I'm going to be here day in and day out without being in operations to ask the relevant questions. I want when Parliament comes here and say, you promised us this within this time frame, they are going to present to you now. I know some of our journalists are not eager for this kind of work, but it's important, even if you are not eager, you'll be given packages. Please come back and ask questions. And I want to thank you for waking up. I know you wouldn't do it for anything because you've got to transmit this news to our people. And you have been with us in this room when we took difficult decisions and where we even took decisions in between to bring about administration in this place. And when we're even dealt with by the courts, and when we came back also from responding to what the courts have said to us. We have not wasted time with what the courts have said. We have moved with speed. We went to appoint the board. We went to appoint the group CEO. So we're operational. So all of these legs, the board needs my support. The group CEO needs the support of the board in order to execute this mandate. So that tomorrow you must not say that I was unable to work because I was not being given support to work in this place. So he's got our support at all levels, even at cabinet, from the president downwards. So we expect this good work to be implemented, that they will present to you, to address including the issues of security, issues of vandalism, issues of recovering the lines, and all of that. And I leave it to you, Ayanda, and thank you very much. And thank you to the chair of the board. And thank you to the media also for waking up in the morning. I know it is Monday. We have disturbed your Monday, some of you. You normally on Mondays wake up at 2 o'clock. But today we broke the rules, and then we woke up early, and 5 o'clock we're on the ground. But thank you very much and for giving us the platform to explain some of these things and not running away from difficult things. And holding us accountable. Thank you very much. Ayanda.
Thank you so much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, you would have seen firsthand the dilapidated structures, you've seen the vandalism, you've seen the extent of the damage. The question is, where to now? How do we fix it? How long will it take? How much will it take? And the man who's going to give us those answers is the group CEO. He's going to take us through a presentation. After then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll then be given an opportunity to ask questions. CEO, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Ayanda. Minister, and the chairperson, before I begin, could I just introduce my colleagues who are here, Minister, just so that the media get a sense of the management, the executive management team that is here, together with members of the Board of Control. I have Mr. Nelson Malefani, who is the acting chair of Rail, of PRASA, Mr. Fana Marutla, who is the acting CEO of PRASA Tech, Ms. Jameka Madikizela, who is the CEO of PRASA Cress, Mr. Neil Roche, who is the CEO of Autopax, Mr. Mtandeni Mutungwa, who is the acting CEO of Intersight, and I have here on my left the group CFO, Lesibana Fosu. And at the very end of the table, Mr. Pule Maletswa, who is the acting head of security, who is sitting next to the nominated manager, Mr. Temba Mahanye, who is responsible for our engagements with the rail safety regulator. That some of our team who are here today, Minister. Honorable Minister Fikile Mbalula, Chairperson of the Board of Control, Mr. Leonard Ramatlakane, the Board of Control of PRASA, and colleagues from the Department of Transport, especially those from the rail branch, and colleagues from PRASA. Honorable Minister, on Friday, during your budget speech, of the 20 pages, around 6 pages were dedicated to PRASA, and for me this once again demonstrated the level of attention and focus that you place on PRASA. I can assure the Minister that we are ready and we will deliver to ensure you realize the mandate given to you and targets agreed to with President Ramaphosa. In your budget speech, you stated that in our 2021-22 budget, expenditure is expected to increase at an average annual rate of 8.1% from 57.3 billion in 2021 to 72.5 billion in 2023-24. Although the substantial share of the expenditure is directed towards rail infrastructure, maintenance, operations, this statement further confirms what you saw today should be a thing of the past. The vandalism and general state of neglect and maintenance will immediately be addressed through various interventions. These include appointment of dedicated bid committees to process the capital program, appointment of a panel of contractors who will be on call to ensure quick turnaround and recovery, whilst also strengthening our program management unit to provide monitoring and oversight. The 2019 annual station condition statement report showed that a total of 66 commuter stations across the country were in a poor condition, whilst the 2021 report reflects an increase of up to 250 stations that are now in a poor state due to escalated levels of theft and vandalism. 95 of these stations are in Gauteng South region, which includes the Soweto corridor. I mentioned the 2019 statistics precisely to highlight the grave impact of COVID-19, which contributed immensely towards vandalism and theft of our assets. The recovery program has commenced, and the Minister, together with our stakeholders, will soon notice workers on site in this program. The contractors are on site now to recover the vandalized substations on the Mabopane corridor. Importantly, these workers will also contribute towards job creation, as we will be involving the communities. In the short term, PRASA Cress will also be sourcing alternative building technologies, such as containers, to open the station and service our commuters. Essentially, we cannot reintroduce our rail service if our stations are not fully operational to enable PRASA to collect the much-needed revenue. We are planning in the next month to reintroduce more rail services in line with your pronouncement at your budget speech. In addition to the current services on the operational lines in Gauteng, we will add the Davidton-Germiston line. We still have challenges around overhead traction energy, which has severely impacted our services, as we currently rely on locomotives, which are not ideal. Whilst the production of the new trains at Gibela is progressing well, the current rolling stock will still be in use, and to this end we have recently awarded an ad hoc maintenance contract to ensure in the short term we recover trains that have been damaged and vandalized. Honourable Minister, in line with the above, we have commenced the infrastructure program to rehabilitate what has been damaged and vandalized. This is important because our rolling stock interacts with our infrastructure. I have also established the Istimela Sabantu Project Office to oversee a focused program on recovery and CapEx rollout to align the needs of our commuters and business. We have adopted a corridor-based approach targeting 7 lines in Gauteng, where we will offer services using electricity power instead of the current diesel service. PRASA's capital program will be implemented to ensure we address the challenges facing the business. The destruction of our assets during the COVID-19 lockdown, which exposed the vulnerability of our network, has brought to the fore new risks that PRASA should manage. One of these risks is around security, and I'm glad to update the Minister that whilst the challenges remain, we are making strides in reducing the security challenges through a number of measures implemented following the Integrated Security Plan launched last year. We have recruited an additional 3,100 permanent security officials to supplement the current deployment in our security personnel. PRASA is further working closely with Transnet, Eskom, and Telkom on plans to push back the security challenges facing the businesses. We won't disclose this for now, but we will soon demonstrate, I hope, the successes. We will soon be going to the market to invite contractors to build the security walls as part of protecting our network, and also install with this the CCTV and vandal-proof technologies, as well as the utilization of drone technology. PRASA's business intelligence, with the help of other law enforcement agencies and the South African Police Services, continue to work around the clock to curb this escalating criminal activity through random and continuous surveillance and monitoring of the scrap dealerships along Metro Rail operational areas. These efforts are bearing positive results, as a number of scrap metal dealerships premises have been found in possession of PRASA stolen material. PRASA security intelligence noted that vandalism seems especially prevalent where there is the presence of electrical wires, indicating the possibility of illicit trading in PRASA electrical property. PRASA, however, continues to make gains in the fight against vandalism, with a recent major bust of an illicit ring trading in PRASA cables. We have successfully made arrests with the help of tip-offs from community members. This is testimony that when working with all stakeholders and community supporters, law enforcement agencies, we can curb this unfortunate growing level of criminality in our rail network. Since my appointment in March, I have traveled across the country and engaged with a number of talented employees. This has empowered me to diagnose, identify, and develop plans on what has caused the disruptions in the business. I have developed a plan to ensure our capital program rollout is implemented in alignment towards ensuring real tangible results are immediately realized. Invariably, as we properly utilize our capital program, our operational expenditure will reduce and be properly deployed for the purpose it was intended. I remain convinced that a year from now, you will see a different PRASA, which delivers on its mandate and is a pride of our government and its commuters. Thank you, Minister. Minister, we will now move to the presentation, which will take different sections, which will be addressed specifically by my colleagues. And we will start with the rail, dealing with the rail. Mr. Malafani will take us through the rail operations. And then Ms. Madikizela will discuss the station program. And then the security questions will be addressed by Mr. Maletswa in the presentation. And then Mr. Marutla will answer any questions that relate to the text, just in the interest of time. It's a fairly lengthy document that is our working document to address some of the concerns. But we felt that at a high level, we should present this here this morning so that we get an overview of exactly the direction that we're going in. Mr. Mpelo, thank you.
Good morning, Minister, Mr. President of the Board, the CEO, Board Directors,
Sorry to interrupt. Colleagues, do you want to get the sound? Okay, I'm going to ask if you take the mic and move them a little bit closer to the gentleman than Chris. If somebody could have said, I appreciate that.
You're going to be on TV today.
Thank you.
You better be on point.
I think maybe just to begin, you can introduce yourself, and then you can go as soon as the colleagues indicate that they are ready. You right up, you don't want to stand in front of the table? Okay, perfect.
Good morning once again, Honorable Minister, Chairperson of the Board, Board Directors, Group CEO, DOT officials that are here, PRASA executive team and the management, and the media. Once again, my name is Nelson Malefani. I'm currently the acting rail CEO. I'll take you briefly through the rail operation side in terms of how do we go about recovering the services. Now, the major role in terms of what we are doing in rail, we are actually the mouth of the customer in terms of the priorities around what needs to be done, which lines needs to be resuscitated, and which stations do we need to focus on. The presentation specifically was touching quite a lot on the Naledi line itself, but looking at holistically the corporate plan that we had, when we develop the plan, we actually focus on what we call the priority corridors. Now, you would find other colleagues asking that, how did you decide it on these lines? So the key issue was, based on the extent of the damages that we had in the system, we had to look at the 10 key lines that we can actually make an impact with them within this financial year. And Naledi is one of the lines that we've identified within that particular profile. Now, one of the key issues that we are looking at when we are about to recover the service, it is also to look at the security aspect, that do we have enough securities to look after the assets before the work gets started on that particular line. Now, the second issue becomes the infrastructure part of it, of which where we are now as a business, it is basically on the procurement side of this material with a lead time of around 10 months that we are actually anticipating to get these lines up and running. Now, the other aspect is the rolling stock part of it. Now, you'd see that where our focus is, it is basically on the EMU train sets. You would recall that some of these lines were running with the yellow trains or old trains, but our focus is to ensure that when you rehabilitate these lines, the focus is on the EMU train sets. And then the last part is the stations, where we actually identified that for this year, our focus must be on the super core as well as the core stations. Now, part of the slide number 5 will reflect those stations on this particular line. Let's get to the second slide, please. Thanks a lot. Basically, this is the profile of that particular line, which I don't want to waste much time around it. We traveled there this morning. We have seen the numbers that are on that particular line, the potential that that line is having, starting from Naledi to all other stations. And I think the core message that we got from the passengers was that give us more trains. Let's ensure that we stop on all other stations so that they can be able to access these services. Let's go, Mr. Mpelo. I think the information is the same. I want to get to the next slide, which is talking to the stations. Now, these are the stations that we are actually, or that we have on that particular corridor, starting from Naledi. Now, Naledi is a key station that we classify it as a super core. And what makes it to be a super core? On average, in a month, we collect something like above 2 million. That means it is in the hub of Soweto, and that is where basically our focus will be in terms of rehabilitation. Nyamega will be talking to that particular space in terms of all the works that needs to be done there. From there, it will be the core stations that are actually following that part 1 and the intermediate that supports that entire corridor. So basically, you will notice that for this year, the focus will be on what we call the super core, as well as the core stations, to make sure that we get them up and running as quick as possible within this financial year. Let's go to the next one. Now here, the slide just reflects the profile in terms of the numbers that we are moving on that line, which I don't want to bore you much about that. The key issue is how do we get that line up and running? I think it's a key issue. I think let's get to the next slide. The same here, we reflected just the numbers so that if you want to pick up or to make a comparison across all other lines, you can be able to pick up which line is actually doing well in terms of the numbers. Get to the next one. I think it's just a repetition there. Look, I will not get much to this one. It talks more to the staff. Remember, after we have rehabilitated as well, we need to ensure that the staff is ready to pick up work or serve the customers on those particular lines. I think this is just to demonstrate the readiness of the staff to deal with the service that is going to start there. The timetables, I won't get much on that. Let's get to the next one. This is the security that I've reflected, that it is key for us before we start any work, we confirm and make sure that we've got the protection for any work that is going to be done on those particular stations. So the numbers actually define the station across the entire line. Now, the key issue is on this particular line as well, on saying that how are we going to deploy the new trains that are standing at Wolmartin at the moment. Now, we'll pick it up that for the lines that has been identified for Gauteng specifically, we went to the extent of reflecting that by this date, we'll be having services in those lines that are supported by those particular train sets. Now, the last slide that I'll be just talking to close this report, it will be talking to the timelines. This line specifically, I think let's get to Naledi specifically, Mr. Mpelo. All right, Naledi, which is the lower line that we have. Now, Naledi itself, Based on the extent of work that needs to be done there related to the tracks that we are classifying it as a payway, jointly with an overhead as well as the substations that needs to be rehabilitated, together with the signaling, the amount of work that we are doing there, it is going to take us until next year, March, to finalize that entire work that needs to be done there. And we are certain that effective from the 1st of April, we will be providing a service under OHT, including the new trains that we are referring to. I think I'll pause there for now. Thanks a lot, Group Speaker.
Thank you. Nyamek, could you take us through this deals specifically around the work that's being done at the stations as part of the rehabilitation of the stations, such as the stations you saw this morning at Mayfair and Naledi as well as Germiston. So PRASA responsible for the facilities management and the upkeep of the stations across the country.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, Chair of the Board and the Board members, members of the media, the DOT staff, and also my colleagues. I'll just take you through the program as outlined by the GCE. Thank you. The work that we have to do, we have several programs, but that which actually talks to station revitalization is what we call the National Station Improvement Program, where we do minor station improvements. And that could go up to something like 10 million, depending on the vandalization of the stations. We have under that what we call the CIP. So CIP would be your capital intervention programs, and ABT, which is a new initiative that we're putting in place, which is alternative building intervention, which is what we talk to when we talk about containers. If we look at the work that has been done since the resumption of service, particularly on the Naledi-Johannesburg corridor, 10 of the stations we've actually brought back to functionality, and 6 of those stations have been identified for implementation in 2021-22. And so that falls under the NSIP program that I've talked to. So we visited Mayfair this morning, as you saw, the vandalism in the stations. Most of the vandalism that we saw would have been when security was removed, and that got worse during the COVID era, where the vandalists or the criminals actually destroyed in daylight, and there was no security in place at the time. So for Mayfair, you'll see there we're planning on spending 8.6 million. We're still on stage 1, which is the planning and initiation of the program. And then the easier ones are actually the ones that we've outlined. This is the remainder of those stations where we will be spending about 500,000. Where we are with that process is that we are about to appoint the panel of contractors. We actually have evaluated. We are at adjudication, which will then allow for us to actually spend the money quicker. So it means that in those stations where work needs to be done, because the level of vandalism is not that severe, it would be easy to actually spend that much money, especially with the appointment of the panel of contractors, which we anticipate in the next 2 weeks we will be giving letters of awards to those contractors. So if you then look at the process and how we're going to get there, we still obviously have to look at different procurement strategies. For your Mayfair, which is your bigger station, at least where there's a lot of work that needs to be done, we have a procurement strategy that we call the Corridor Project Office, where we then move from stages 1, where we do the planning and initiation, to a point where we've detailed specifications. And then because of the size of the projects, then we actually appoint our panel of contractors that would be in place by that time. We will talk to the program in the next slides that are there. So we did have, you know, general overall repair that came, and we have inhabitable stations. Some of them, as I said, were fixed in the main, but some of them we still have to fix. And I talked to the lack of security, that was a problem. What we're talking about here is just really making sure that we have ticket offices, ablution facilities, and any other buildings that are required by rail to make sure that the stations are working. And so these will require improvements, so we've talked to the amount of money that will go into that to make sure that these stations are functional. So I talked to the procurement strategy. So the procurement strategy, as I said, on the 3 stations that are looking really bad at this point in time are those 3, where we have the corridor project office, and then we will use the panel of contractors that we will be appointing. So it really makes the cycle in terms of providing the service quite shorter. And then we have the other 2 where we're looking at the panel of contractors. This is just the picture. You've seen this picture this morning. It probably looks better here than it did, but this is the inside in terms of what it looked like. This is Pomalong. Again, also structurally, it's fine. It's just really to fix inside the work that needs to be done, which our panel of contractors will be working on. And then you have Bramfontein, beautiful old building, which also looked really bad. All we're really doing at this stage is to just to clean and make sure that the horticulture is in place, but the work that will be done is what we need to work on with our program management unit to be able to bring them back to service. This is Mayfair. So for Mayfair, you will see, I don't know, I can't see it, probably I know because I've seen what the timelines are. But we would then go out on tender. We're looking at construction happening from about August. Sorry, construction is around August, yes. And we're looking to work throughout the builder's holiday, because some of the challenges that we've had in our space is where we start work and then we have to stop. We are looking at middle of January for Mayfair to be operational. I talked about the panel of contractors that we are about to appoint in about 2 weeks' time, where we are now adjudicating the tenders. And here we're looking at September in terms of providing the stations back to service. It's not just these 2, it's the other ones that we need to bring back to service on the corridor. I haven't outlined all the corridors. I really focused just on Naledi, as Nelson also did. So the number of stations that we want to bring back to service, including having ABT, is 108 stations in this financial year. This presentation just talked to the Naledi Johannesburg corridor. Then we did bring into here the Vereniging line. The Vereniging line is not one of the top 10 corridors, as Nelson had highlighted. It's one which we're working on. The East Klipstown station, at this point in time, as CRES, or in terms of station revitalization, we have to respond to the stations as and when rail and tech are able to provide the services. Otherwise, we end up doing work, and then that work is undone through the vandalism as we have to work within their timelines. So this one is not in this financial year's work, but as soon as we have progress from a tech point of view in the network, the OHT, and the work that needs to be done, we will then respond to them. Our timelines from a CRES point of view are shorter than that of rail and tech, and so we can respond quickly as and when required. So that is where we have in terms of Kliptown. The timeline there of 14 November 22 is obviously responsive to the timeline that was provided by rail and the ability to close it. We have that on the basis of the information that we have to date. And that's how it looks currently. And that's the timeline that we have also for Kliptown. And we said that we're looking at end of 2022 to be able to bring back that to service in response to the timelines that rail and tech provide to us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Minister, I'd like to ask Mr. Fikile Mbalula to take us through the security operations. Question? Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Okay.
Thank you, CEO, as well as the team members for taking us through some of the presentation. In the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open the floor and ask for questions. We will then defer to the various heads of the department who can answer the questions if we need more granular details or more specifications. I think let's try and see if we can do it that way. Do we have any questions from our journalists? I think this was quite a thorough presentation. I see lots of you taking notes feverishly. If there's any area where you need clarity, feel free to ask now. Are we sorted in terms of timeline? Are we happy in terms of cost? Is there anything else that you need more information on?
Yeah.
Here, no?
Hi, it's Noah from Jacaranda FM. Ms. Matilisa, I just want to ask about the panel of contractors. How are they going to be selected? What are the requirements for their selection? You know, those T's and C's. And Mr. Malefani, I just want to know more about how the staffing is going to work, because you just skipped through it and we realized today that the vandalization that is happening at the stations is because of lack of staffing. So we didn't see the numbers. So how is your staffing going to work? What is the priority in staffing that you will be selecting? And also, I don't know who can answer this, if it's the minister. 2 million, Naledi has a potential of generating 2 million a month. But the state that's in right now, does it seem like where is that 2 million in the previous month before lockdown? What has been happening to that money? I don't know between the raid or who can answer that.
I'm going to ask if we see if we can take the questions in one sweep so that we can answer them, and then Minister will close for us if there are no further questions. Does anybody else have a question? Yes or no?
Can you give an easier breakdown? For instance, you say 108 stations that will be brought into this financial year. Can you attach a cost to that? And then say, in the second financial year, this is how many stations, this is the cost, this is the expenditure in the outer year, so that our readers can get it clear what is coming in this and this traveling.
Thank you, Senator.
And I just wanted to ask one more thing here. In terms of the trains themselves running, I mean, people want to know when can they expect the trains to be running, exactly when, in terms of time frames, when can they go and purchase their tickets and use the trains? So is there a particular date that you've put in place to say the trains will be running at this particular time?
Thank you. Can we take the last hand? All right, thank you so much. GPO, I'm going to hand over to you to maybe delegate who should answer next before we get the final
I'll let Rebecca take the issue on the allocation of contractors, and then Nelson will address the staff allocation that relates to rail. The GCO will take the 2 million a month, if that's okay. And then as well as the breakdown for the gentleman was asking how that is going to be allocated. We'll ask him to do that. And on the running of the trains, Mr. Mbalula, respond to that one.
On the panel of contractors, we went out to tender, and last year around October. We closed the tenders in December. We have been evaluating, so the criteria that is used is the CIDB criteria. So we would be looking at grades 1 to grade 6. So that's the same criteria that would be used. So all the contractors that are out there and are registered with the CIDB, we actually selected from that, and that's what we used. So it's just purely the norm, I suppose, in terms of the industry. So we have been evaluating because we've had quite a large responsiveness. You can imagine that the construction sector has been going through a difficult time. So I think we've had, in some instances, about 3,000 in Gauteng, for example, and in other regions the numbers would be different depending on who's there. So I hope that does answer your question. So that, where we are now is post the evaluation stage.
Thanks a lot. I think I'll respond to Thanks a lot. I'll be responding to the second question, which was related to how do we get about the numbers, in that particular line. Look, the reason why we are classifying the corridors is simply to determine the requirements for that line in terms of the security, based on the category that I've also reflected, that this station we classify as super core and core. That determines the numbers. Just as an example, in this case, you'll find Naledi we have deployed 8 guards, but coming to Merafe, it's 4 guards and so forth. That is not only limited to security, that goes to customer services as well. The number of staff per type of a station. You'll find that, for example, in Naledi, we have 8 staff members working there. In Merafe, you'll find lesser number than that. The same with the train drivers. We determine the number per line based on the number of trains that are running there. It goes with the maintenance staff as well, the work that needs to be done. That's what informs the number of people that we deploy per corridor. And there was also a question related to the 2 million that was reflected on earlier. That is just a measurement, for example, to say this station, the potential that it holds, it can generate to this amount. So that forces us to ensure that we prioritize the station or the line and make sure that we put effort, because we know that there are a lot of people that are using that particular line. I think that's what informs the number. In terms of whether the money goes, I think there's a process of finance within the business around the revenue that gets generated and go to the certain priorities. Thanks a lot.
Can we just get a follow-up on the same answer?
Yeah, I just need clarity. So you're saying that because how it sounds right now, it's like there isn't a clear plan. So for the sake of our audience and people who are going to listen to you, which station will be prioritized more, and how did that happen? And not because how you're making it sound is like, for instance, here, if you could just give us numbers. Naledi, 50 people will be deployed there, and the reason why we want 50 people at Naledi is 1, 2, 3, because that is not. It's not a clear answer for me, sorry, but I just want clarity, because we need to report on how many people will be at Naledi, because we saw the devastation at Clifton. I cannot report that probably, you understand? So if you could just give us proper numbers according to and the priorities, which station was more vandalized, and what are your assessment? Why was it more vandalized? What research was made around that? Because it's not like, yes, it was vandalized, but you need to know what your report says. What are the findings of your report? Because right now we're not getting that.
Okay. Can I go? Can I respond? Okay, thanks for that. Look, I guess in terms, just to save time, the numbers are there. We can share this report just so that we get to the details to see that on each station, what is the deployment plan, the number of stations that are allocated to that. I think the plan is available to share that particular information. And then just to respond to the issue of vandalism that we just mentioned now. Naledi To be honest with you, it was one of the lines whereby we never had a huge vandalism in terms of the station compared to what we saw on the Kliptown side, on the west trans, I mean say the east rand, and as well as on the Roodepoort side. So that even says to us that the security on that line, it was still there even when things were happening. And the good thing that we have on the Naledi line is the community involvement that we have that assisted us to make sure that the stations are not attacked as severely as other areas. So in terms of that on its own, it says to us that the amount of work that needs to be done on those stations is not extensive as other stations that we have saw like Kliptown. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. And I think, colleagues, for those who have more specific technical questions that may not be answered on this platform, I will refer you to Bani to give you some of those soft copies that you require in terms of the presentation. So you will get your answers, because I feel we are all focused on a particular angle, and so yours would be the staffing. Bani will be able to furnish you with those details a little bit more. I'll share his contact with you as well. I'm going to ask the gentleman to also just assist us once more. Where's Leah?
Okay.
Just next one.
Let me just do this. Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, Minister. Morning, Chair. Morning, Group CEO. The question I'm going to cover is about the timelines in terms of the lines will be opened. I think the gentleman wanted to know when will the train start to run on the line. I think maybe in a nutshell, if I can summarize it this way, to say that the where you have got substations, the duration which the rail group CEO, the rail CEO mentioned was that it will take 10 months to repair the substations. Now, the 10 months, in a nutshell, entails 2 months of procurement, and then the 6 months of sourcing the transformers, because we need transformers on the substation, and 2 months of doing the installation of those transformers. So if you add that duration in total, it's about 10 months, right? But where we do the repair of the OST only, we need a duration of about 8 months, okay? So if you look at the 8 months, and the repair of the substation and the OST will be running parallel. 8 months for the OSTE and 10 months for the substations, which is why he did mention that we are forecasting that by March next year, the lines will be opened. So March next year, the new financial year, the trains will be running, because that's more or less the duration we have now. The Group CEO mentioned earlier that we needed to put together the bid committees. That has been done. Those bid committees are the ones that are signing off the documents that we're going to be using to procure the services of these suppliers. So in a nutshell, the answer is March, April next year, the trains will be running on most of these corridors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take one of the questions, and I believe they're coming to you.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the question about the 2 million prior the lockdown and the vandalism, what happened to it? As you would understand, the funding mechanism that is used in PRASA, we've got the subsidy, and we've got our own revenue that we generate in the form of fare revenue, amongst others. So that 2 million has been used to supplement the subsidy we received from National Treasury to fund the operations of Metro Rail. So as such, that 2 million has been used. It's a cumulative. 2 million is roughly a monthly figure over a period of 12 months that has been used to fund the operations. The second question was, what is the breakdown of the national station improvement over a period? We receive allocation for the MTF period, that is the 3-year rolling period. For the first year, which is 2021 financial year, the National Station Improvement Program budget is 386 million. For 2022-23 is 313 million. And the outer year, it's 297 million. So all in all, over the next 3 years, the National Station Improvement Program has got a budget of 997 million to deal with the projects or the entire program that Ms. Madikizela has spoken about. I think just to add on what Mr. Malifani has said in terms of the vandalism, I think the question was to what extent there has been vandalism in our stations like Naledi. We are in the process of asset verification in all our stations, where we're taking stock of the extent, meaning the cost as well, the financial implications of those vandalism. So just stay with us or stay close to us when we're releasing our annual financial statement towards mid-year, which in terms of the regulation is the 31st of July. We should be able to share with yourselves the extent to which vandalism has happened in our facilities, all the stations across the country. Thank you.
Another one. That was it.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Wrap for us, and then hand over to the Minister who will just do the closing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Honorable Minister, Chairperson, Board of Control members, and my colleagues from DOT and PRASA, and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Minister, thank you very much for making yourself available today, and the Chair and the Board. We realize the scale of the task that we have ahead of us, and we fully intend fulfilling our mandate, our responsibilities, to ensure that our commuters can be returned to the network in the course of the next year. And we will make sure that we redouble our efforts in that regard continuously, and we look forward to further engagement with the Minister, and we even would request the Minister, don't tell us in advance, drop in on us, the Chair drop in on us, so that we can make sure that we are doing and fulfilling our obligations as executive and management throughout the organization. I think it's important to note, Minister, that Gauteng is obviously our largest region, but this work is going on in the Western Cape, it's going on in the Eastern Cape, and it's also going on in KwaZulu-Natal. So we could visit any one of those areas to make sure that we could see what's happening at the depot, what's happening with the lines. So this is work that's going on across the country, but Gauteng, obviously the heartbeat of the economy of the country, has a particular significance, but no less any of the other regions across the country where PRASA operates. So, Minister, I thank you and thank Chair for you and the Board for being here today, and we will continue to do the work that we are entrusted with, Minister. Thank you.
Ross, will you be able to just close for us?
I don't want to. He doesn't want to speak.
Chair.
Well, no. Thank you very much, Minister. I think I need to thank you and the rest. The plan has been outlined to all of you to see. So what is going to be, we will stay together with you, stay closer to you in terms of the implementation. And the implementation, as the Minister has spoken about it earlier on, the Board will, of course, hold management accountable to the time frame set, including the time frame that is not set. Some of them are still we're contesting them. Let me say that, Mr. Marutla, right up front, some of those time frames we have contested them as a board to shorten them, so that we are able to stay with our mandate of making sure that trains run. But as for us in-house, for now, I think, thank you very much, Minister, and thank you for everybody that has come, the board members that have woke up early in the morning to be here. Thank you very much.
Just to conclude, thank you very much to everybody and their contribution. What I and everybody need to consider doing is to package the presentation for the media and answer the question that Penyo asked from Sowetan in terms of those things that he wants. And I think it will be difficult if you are not a media person to understand what he's talking about. So PRASA must do that. To answer the question, there is vandalism. How many corridors you are targeting? Yes, you've got them. And then how much are you going to spend? You can postpone the question of the audit is still coming. The extent to which, how much is this vandalism costing PRASA? But you need those questions. Otherwise, it will not be clear. And then the plan is there to say how many corridors you want to recover within which period. You have said others by December, others by March, and Mr. Marukle was assisting with regard to that, but he's not a media person, so he wouldn't understand. So that must be compressed, and then give the media the package, and that is it, so that we are clearer. If there are follow-up questions, you can ask the group CEO and everybody else. In conclusion, I just want to say that our journey continues with PRASA. Like I said, that we've got a plan to fight vandalism. We have been inundated by society about vandalism. When we presented our corporate plan through PRASA to Parliament, it was clear that we're going to be fighting this, increasing our security capacity, and all of that. You have seen for yourselves, even before us, you do have a sense of what is happening in the stations when it comes to vandalism. But we do have a plan in terms of pushing that back, and in a big way. And I think you are going to see action, and you'll be invited, not only for anything else, but as and when we unveil the different corridors and implementing and seeing dust on the ground, we are hard at work. So don't take everything for what we tell you. Keep us accountable with the plan we have presented to you as to how far are you with that. So we are on the journey. We've got the driver. We might have had the car, but the car was not finished yet. Was still in the plant. But we've got the driver, the CEO, that we have employed now. And we've got the board, which the chair have spoken in terms of what is expected. As the minister, I've outlined to you in Parliament and to date what is expected of us. I'm meeting with the board and the management after every 3 months to look at the compact in terms of its implementation. We have had our meeting a week ago. We will have another one in the next 3 months, and then we will be going to the AGM. And I hope when we meet in our next meeting with the board and the parliamentary committee comes to evaluate the corporate plan, our story will be different from today. But thank you for everybody and the PRASA management for your time. This is not in vain. Our people are waiting out there. PRASA is a special story, given the corruption that has gone on here, mismanagement, and irregular contracts, and many other things that have happened here, to a point where we arrived that this is a broken place. Society needs to be kept up to date, and the media has given us the platform. What are you doing at PRASA and all of that and so on? So today we have brought you close to what we're doing, and the next, it will be action itself to address the vandalism that you are seeing. So we've got a capable team of men and women. There's a lot of work to be covered to undo the outer years of mismanagement that have taken place here. Thank you very much, Ayanda.
Thank you so much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you once again for your time. I'm going to ask that you follow my colleague Wendy. She's going to raise her hand over there for some light refreshments after this. We know that you might be very tired and hungry as a result of this long morning. We do thank you once again for coming with us. She will show you to the venue downstairs where you will receive refreshments. Minister, Board Chair, Group CEO, much appreciated.